In this video, I'll show you how to set up Ableton Live with just about any MIDI keyboard so you can start adding live keys to your DJ set. What's up? This is DJ Inferno. Welcome to DJ Inferno TV, and this is part 4 of my live remix tutorial series. By the end of this tutorial, you'll know how to set up Ableton Live with a MIDI keyboard so you can start playing keys along with your DJ set. Why would you want to add a keyboard to your DJ set? Well, it's for the same reason that you want to add a pad controller to your DJ set. It's the idea of combining DJing with live music performance. So in future videos, I'm going to show you some creative ways to integrate the keyboard, but for now, let's focus on getting it set up. So if you haven't already, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. And if you get value out of this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. So before we get started, you're going to need 2 things for this tutorial. You're going to need Ableton Live. I'll be using version 10, but you can use version 9. And you'll need a MIDI keyboard. I'll be using the Novation Launchkey 49 MK2, but just about any MIDI keyboard will do. So let's get started. If you've been following along with past tutorials, you can open up your saved Ableton project, or you can create a new one from scratch and just follow along. For the physical setup, make sure you've connected your keyboard via USB. And if you're running low on USB ports, it's perfectly fine to connect it to a USB hub along with your other controllers. As well, make sure you've connected your audio interface to your speakers. For my setup, I connect my laptop's built-in output to channel 1 on my DJ mixer. In Ableton Live, go to Preferences by typing Command, comma, and click on the Audio tab and make sure that your audio output device is set correctly. Then you can go to the Link MIDI tab and make sure that the input is assigned to the correct MIDI keyboard. You'll want to make sure that the track is set to on, and this will allow Ableton to see MIDI data coming from the black and white keys on your keyboard. You're also going to want the remote set to on as well, and that's going to allow Ableton to see MIDI data coming from the knobs and faders on the keyboard. For the Novation Launchkey series, you're going to want to turn the in control buttons off if you're going to want to assign these pads, knobs, and faders to anything inside your Ableton project. In choosing the size of the MIDI keyboard, you'll want to think about how you'll be performing with it. If you're an experienced keyboard player, you'll probably want at least a 49 key keyboard so you can play more easily with 2 hands. Otherwise, just stick to the 25 key. But it's really up to you and your performance style. For this tutorial, you'll be using Ableton's stock virtual instruments. These virtual instruments come in 2 categories: synthesizers, which produce sound, and samplers, which play back small pieces of sounds. I'll show you how to set up 2 of these. One will be a piano sampler instrument, and the other will contain 2 synthesizers split into 2 sections. The lower section will be bass, the rest of it will be keys, and you'll set it up with a polyphonic synthesizer. You can find your instruments in the browser window to the left, and you can search either by sounds or by Ableton's built-in instruments. First, create a MIDI track. Next, drag an instrument rack into the MIDI track. In the instrument rack, you'll be able to add and play multiple instruments. The first instrument will be piano. Look for a piano sound by looking in the sounds category. You can find this in the piano and keys, or you can also type Command F, type piano, and click on the sounds to find all the instruments with the word piano in its name. Select grand piano and drag it into the instrument rack. You'll see there's a small red dot next to the grand piano. That's because I've added this to my favorites. This is a really cool feature in Ableton Live 10. For all the instruments or sounds that you use most, you can easily organize them by right-clicking, then clicking 1 through 7. You'll find it in your favorite section on the upper left. Once you've added the grand piano, it becomes a chain in the instrument rack. You can view the chains by clicking here, and you'll see that it's a chain right here. Next, you're going to find your bass and drag that into an empty space in the same instrument rack. When you play your keyboard, you'll hear both instruments playing at once. Next, find a synth. I'm going to choose a saw wave synth and do the same thing. Now, all 3 instruments play at the same time. Next, select your bass and select your synth while holding Shift. Then type Command G. This groups the bass and synth into its own instrument rack. Click here and rename the track Bass Synth. You can do this by typing Command R as in rename. Now we have a piano as a chain and a bass synth as another chain. You can think of chains as a path that sound flows through. So a chain can be simply an instrument, like the piano. It can be an effect or an instrument with a combination of effects. The keyboard will trigger sounds in whatever chain is selected. If you click chains, you'll see that both of these chains are assigned to the same zone, which is zone 0. You can assign the chains to different zones by sliding the zone for the bass synth to zone 1. Now, your keyboard will only play your piano when the chain selector is on zone 0, and only play your bass synth if the chain selector is assigned to zone 1. You can move the chain selector back and forth and try this out. To make this easier to do in a live setting, I'm going to map a knob to control the chain selector. First, click here to show the macro controls, then right-click here and map the selector to whatever macro knob you like. Once you do that, you'll see that the knob now controls the selector. Then get into MIDI map mode by typing Command M or by clicking up here. Click on the macro knob, then turn the knob on your physical keyboard that you want to use. Now you can select your instrument easily in a live setting. So now we have the piano in one zone and the bass synth in the other, but we still have more work to do. We need to split the keyboard zones so that the lower notes control the bass, while the rest of the notes control our saw synth. To do this, we need to first click on the bass synth chain to make sure it's selected, then move to the right and click on key. This will show us that both the bass and synth are assigned to all notes on the keyboard. First, we're going to assign the bass to all notes C2 and lower. We can do this by dragging the rightmost side of the bass zone selector to C2. Now you can see that only notes from C2 and below will trigger our bass. Then we'll do the same for our saw synth. But this time, drag the leftmost side of the zone selector to C#2. This will make sure that only notes from there on up will trigger the saw synth. Let's try it out. Okay, one more problem. We can hear that the bass notes are too high. So to fix this, we go to MIDI effects in the browser, select pitch, and drag the -12 preset onto the bass chain. This will transform all MIDI notes down by 12 semitones, which is the same as 1 octave. Now we can play some nice two-handed chords. We don't have to stop here. You can add more bass and synth instruments and repeat the process within the bass synth chain. Let's choose one more bass and synth, with each sounding different than the ones we've already picked. I'll choose a more plucky saw bass and a plucky guitar. Why not? Then, using the same process, I'll add the bass and guitar to the bass synth instrument rack. I'll group the bass instruments together, as well as the plucky guitar with the saw synth. This creates more instrument racks inside the bass synth one we've already built. Next, I'll go to the bass chain, click chain, and assign the plucky saw bass to zone 1, and keep the sub bass on zone 0. I'll do the same for the synth chain, keeping the saw synth on zone 0 while assigning the plucky guitar to zone 1. Then I'll go back to the bass chain, open the macro controls, assign the chain selector to one of those controls, then, just like before, go into MIDI map mode and assign this knob to that macro knob. I'll do the same for the synth chain. Open the macro controls, assign the chain selector, then assign a different knob to that macro knob in MIDI mode. So just like before, when I play my plucky saw bass, the notes are a little too high. So I'll do the same thing I did before, go into MIDI effects and dragging a -12 pitch onto the plucky analog saw bass. Now it's the right notes. You may notice that when you try to select between basses or between synths, it's actually kind of hard to get the instrument chosen because there's so many values here within this knob that are beyond the range of any selected instrument. So to fix this, you need to select both of these, click the first one, hold shift, click the next one, and distribute the range of zone for both of these equally across both. Then right click, distribute ranges equally. This now splits up the zone equally between the two instruments. This makes it so that it's impossible to miss either one of these. And if I turn my knob, it's a lot easier to select. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over on the synth side. Click the top one, click the bottom one, expand, expand, right click, distribute ranges equally, and there we go. Now your last step is to make sure that your second synth, in this case the plucky guitar, is assigned also to the upper keys. So make sure you click on that, click on key, and then drag this to the right to match. Do the same thing for your bass, and you'll be all set. Now you can play any combination of bass and synth in a live setting. Last, this volume was clipping, so let's turn this down about 5 dB, and that should do it. And let's rename the track Keys. And that, my friends, is it. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you got some value out of this video. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to help. My name is DJ Inferno. This is DJ Inferno TV. Thank you guys very much, and I will see you in 2 weeks.